UFC 7.5, otherwise known as the Ultimate, took place on December 16th, 1995. This is the first time we're actually given a parental advisory notice, which I just found hilarious. I mean, better late than never, I suppose. But the first thing you see coming out of that is the Gerard Jordeau Taylor Tooley knockout. So I'm trusting that people were advised quickly. But we have a nice video package here. The video packages are always good. They are a highlight of these shows. I don't know if anyone else is like this, but I absolutely love the cold opens we get before UFC pay-per-views now with like Ron Perlman narrating them. Like, I loved the last one for 325 Volk Lopez that had Robert Whittaker on the boat. I thought that one was really good too. Let's open up the gate as the closing line that they're trying to push at the end of these videos. I don't know why they don't just use let's get it on. Like, Big John is reffing all of these fights, and it sounds ridiculous to say he's one of the stars, but he's on every single show, at every fight. Every so often they interview him. I prefer the closing line of let's get it on, and it actually makes sense as opposed to let's open up the gate. But we are at the foothills of the Rocky Mountains at the Mammoth Gardens in Denver, Colorado, back to a capacity of 2,800 down from 9,000 in New York. And I know that we're banned in New York, but I'm not sure why we came back to Denver. It has to be a Bruce Beck is back on commentary, twice as fast, twice as furious, twice as tough. 8 fighters, 4 tournament winners, 3 runners-up. This is the ultimate. $150,000 on the way to the winner. Jeff Blatnick is also back, and so is Don Wilson. I do not hate this lineup. I think that Bruce and Jeff can somewhat be sympathisers at points, but Don Wilson is definitely not bad, and he's back with a new haircut. But here we see the tournament bracket. We have the winners against the runners-up in the first round. Keith Hackney is also here. I will never forget what you done to Joe Son. We go over the rules of the octagon quickly, then it's into our first fight. Tank Abbott versus Steve Jenham. Rich Goins is back instead of Michael Buffer. I am not thrilled about that. But the fight starts, Tank gets to take down quickly, and he is able to crawl to the fence. Like, whilst on top of Steve Jenham, he actually crawls, and Jenham just hangs on and lets him do it. But I'm just noticing now Tank Abbott out here in the Kill Bill boots on, looking like Uma Thurman. He ends up pressing Jenham's face against the cage, and this must act as some sort of neck crank, because Steve Jenham just taps, and I think maybe it was to prevent damage, because would you tap to this? It felt a bit like a panic tap, to be fair, but again, if he's working tomorrow as a police officer, does he really want his face mashed in? Like, you know, to the semi-finals. Next up, we have Paul Varlins. He's in here instead of Pat Smith, which, I mean, it would make more sense to have Pat Smith in here, but he had to withdraw due to injury. He's up against Dan the Beast Severn. In fact, fuck, Keith Hackney's in here. Right, okay, it would have made sense to have Varlins in instead of Hackney. Right, irrelevant, right, doesn't matter. The fight starts, Varlins must have PTSD from UFC 7. First thing he throws is a half-hearted leg kick. Severn takes him down into side control, into an arm triangle. Varlins taps, and Dan Severn is through to face Tank Abbott in the first semi-final, as Jeff Blatnick feels the need to remind us that Varlins is still breathing. Okay, thanks, Jeff. Next up, we have Dave Beneteau versus Oleg Taktarov. This is a rematch from UFC 6 when Oleg got the sub in less than a minute. Can he repeat that here as well? Well, almost he can, to be fair to him. They clinch the start. Taktarov stuffs the takedown, looks for the heel hook. He gets the heel hook, and Taktarov is through. We are rattling through these first round matchups. He got the sub in 1:15 this time. And then in our final first round fight, we have Keith Hackney, master of the dick punch. I will still not let that go. And he's up against UFC 7 champion Marco Ruas, who still won't tell anyone his age. I don't know why. He must be like fucking 60 years old. Like, I don't understand why this is such a problem for him. Anyways, the fight begins, and these two are now both trying leg kicks, which honestly, return on investment might be the best move in MMA. Let me know if you agree, but measuring risk versus reward, the leg kick might be the best move. Probably an oblique kick over anything else, but they clinch against the cage. Ruas gets the takedown and the back, some nasty shots to the back of the head before he gets the rear naked choke and the win. We have our final semi-finalist, Marco Ruas, going to face Dan Severn in the next round. Here are our semi-finals. Here's how our bracket is shaping up. But before we get to any next fight, we have a look into our super fight at UFC 8, Shamrock versus Kimo. I cannot wait for this one. And here is an interview, praise to his Lord Jesus Christ, from Kimo. He has been working on techniques as opposed to just general street brawling. These are his words, not mine. And we'll see how effective that is in our UFC 8 review, which should be coming shortly. But we have our first semi-final fight, Tank Abbott versus Dan Severn. And Don Wilson, I'll say it again here, such a welcomed addition to commentary. He's literally out here saying, yeah, this whole pit fighter marketing bullshit for Tank Abbott, yeah, that is what it is. It's all bullshit. I've never heard of any of this before. He is exposing industry plants like so bad. Like nobody has ever done it like this before. I actually think Tank Abbott had to rename his style to Street Fighter after this. Don Wilson cooked him so badly. And I don't even know if Don Wilson comes back after this. We get into the fight. Tank stuffs the takedown attempt from Severn, as Severn then just presses him against the cage, to which then he gets the takedown. Severn is throwing here, punches, knees, elbows. He fucking hates Tank Abbott. I don't think I've ever seen Severn throw like this before. He is just riding Tank Abbott at this point. Tank has no answer for Severn's wrestling. Severn almost STF style goes for a neck crank. He lets go. It's as though he's just having fun bullying Tank here. Severn must have thrown, I'm not joking, about 100 unanswered strikes here, whilst Tank isn't actually out. Like he could end the fight, but Tank hasn't shown any ability to move from this position. He's just taking shots. Again, not the most devastating strikes, but can you justify taking cumulative damage like this over 18 minutes? So Severn is looking for these knees to the head and then to the body, and Severn's corner man will not stop talking to this girl at the side of the cage. Like he knows this fight is over already. And you might notice, eagle-eye observers, that Don Fry is in Dan Severn's corner here. We will see Don Fry at UFC 8, just as an aside. But Tank manages to get back to his feet here with 3 to go, but I will spare you the suspense. We end up going to the scorecards. I say scorecards, right? It's a fucking whiteboard where they just write a name down on it. But after nearly 18 minutes of Severn just riding Tank, he wins by unanimous decision. And Tank is a very poor sport here. Climbs over the cage before the referee can raise the hands. But we're into our second semi-final now. We have the UFC 6 winner Oleg Taktarov against the UFC 7 winner Marco Ruas. The fight starts and they still have these overhead lights on, and they're so distracting. So like they're sweeping blue lights all over the octagon, and again it's so distracting. I don't know why they keep doing this. I said this in the last review. Like, how is this still a thing? These two basically just end up standing up here doing nothing. Like, Oleg is a good wrestler, so Ruas won't shoot, but Ruas has good jiu-jitsu, so Oleg won't take him down. We just settle on a clinch against the cage. Oleg presses Ruas against the cage while Ruas stomps at the toes. I'm not making this up, folks. This is all the action that we get in the opening minutes. Oleg tries to roll for a heel hook or knee bar, but Ruas ends up on top and the Vietnam flashbacks begin. But we're back up to the feet, 13 to go. I don't know why Ruas just won't go for the leg kicks. He throws them so sparingly. See, when you beat Varlands last time, like, why would you not just be spamming these? Oleg shoots, Ruas stuffs it, they clinch. Oleg jumps the gilly and takes it to the floor. But Ruas ends up staying calm and we are stun locked with absolutely no movement. So Big John ends up having to stand us up with 9 to go. Don Wilson, again, just genius on commentary here, brings up another very valid point, that the fighters aren't thinking in combinations, but rather just one big strike. Nobody's attacking the body. And the more that I hear from Don Wilson, the more I think he should be in this cage, because he could beat all these brain-dead fighters with his mind alone. And it's not even revolutionary thoughts that he has, it's just basic common sense. But at this point in the game, common sense can actually go quite far. So these two stand up, doing their best to stay at range and make no contact. Ruas throws a leg kick every now and again, but in terms of judging this fight, Oleg has been the one walking down Ruas. He had the choke earlier in the fight, the leg lock attempt. And if I could call this thing a draw and just hand Severn the tournament, I would. But like this is terrorism at its finest. We go to the judges who don't have scorecards, but again, just a little whiteboard that they write a name down, and it is unanimous for Oleg Taktarov. He is through to the final to face Dan the Beast Severn. Ken Shamrock is here, cage side. He is doing an interview with Bruce Beck, dripped out, talking about the super fight with Kimo that's coming up. He says he loves these super fights. He likes having one fight as opposed to the tournament format. He says he's been in a lot of tournaments, and he's looking forward to fighting Kimo. And he will be joining us on commentary for the ultimate final. And finally, the time has arrived. We are here at the ultimate final, a rematch from UFC 5 for the ultimate championship. The winner will receive $150,000 and the loser will receive $25,000. And can I just say, this is why we need a super fight in between the semi-final and final, because Taktarov could not have had 5 minutes. Commentary tries to say he had 20 minutes. He had like 5 minutes since his last fight, which went the distance, whilst Severn has probably had over half an hour between his fight ending, the walkouts, introductions, the fight, the decision, the Shamrock interview, and walking back out. Taktarov has barely had time to put a sticking plaster on his face, get his shit together, and get the fuck back out there. Now, like, for half an hour against Dan Severn, like, could we not have pushed Shamrock and Kimo to this event? But I digress. Taktarov slips and Severn tries to jump on him, but Taktarov rolls for the knee bar. He almost gets it. Shamrock seems to think it's over, but Severn manages to escape. Commentary is very impressed, but Severn now just starts smothering Taktarov in half guard. Severn is able to move into side control. Oleg brings it back to half guard. Severn keeps throwing in these headbutts and tries to mount up and throwing strikes, but Oleg's able to hold him. The fight has a similar sort of feel to the super fight between Shamrock and Taktarov, but the difference is Severn is frequently attempting to strike, to create distance to strike. When he can't, he goes for the headbutts. There's an aggressiveness in Severn's wrestling that Shamrock has not been able to match in the super fight, which has led to them being quite boring. Ironically, Shamrock beat Severn in a super fight, but that's besides the point. Severn is actually able to transition and pass the guard, which makes the fight so much more bearable to watch than Ken Shamrock's last few outings in these previous super fights. Taktarov is able to work his way back up to the feet and they separate. The doctor then has to look at Taktarov's cut and they decide that he can keep going. But, I mean, I can't believe this was ever in any doubt. Like, he has a couple of scratches, but once his face gets wiped, all the blood goes away. So I don't know how his face looks like it's bleeding so badly during the fight, but then when you wipe it, there's like no blood there. Oleg looks for the knee bar again. Severn's able to stuff the attempt. He gains control on the ground. We start to drift into terrorism territory. Severn lies here on top of Oleg in half guard as, like, he knows he's ahead. He knows he can just ride out the clock, but Big John says, fuck that, and stands them both up. Thank you, John. Thank you for that. We then stay standing for several minutes where nothing is happening, similar to the Ruas Taktarov fight from the last semi-final. But this time it's because they're literally so tired. Taktarov trips Severn and pulls him into guard. I don't know how smart that was, but I mean, at least there's some action. Severn's happy to just sit here though and sit out the rest of the time in the fight until we then get the 3-minute overtime period, which takes place all on the feet. I mean, Taktarov goes for the trip, ends up just sitting down because he's so tired, and then Severn just hits him with like a light jab and Oleg just falls back. But that is it. That is the end of the fight. The judges score the contest to Dan Severn, unanimous decision. Severn takes the ultimate. He wins the $150,000, and that means Dan Severn has won a UFC tournament, now an ultimate. He will now get another shot at the super fight title. He will face the winner of Shamrock versus Kimo. As for the ultimate or UFC 7.5, this was a fine tournament. Nothing special. Again, first round of matchups are the best round of matchups consistently on these cards. We had 3 decisions that were quite one-sided and somewhat boring affairs, but not offensively bad, like Gracie Shamrock or Shamrock Taktarov, or even the 15-minute guard in Gracie versus Severn. It wasn't offensively bad, just a little bit boring towards the latter stages of the tournament. I wouldn't recommend that you watch it. It's not one of those must-see tournaments. It's not one of the better early tournaments. But again, somewhere towards the lower end of middle, maybe. But we do have something to look forward to at UFC 8. We already know about the Shamrock versus Kimo super fight, but that is not all, folks. We have the debut of Don Fry. We seen him in the corner tonight. He's going to be competing at UFC 8. We also have the debut of Gary Big Daddy Goodridge. I guarantee you have seen this knockout, the one with the elbows and the crucifix, one of the all-time knockouts. But can he go all the way? Or will Don Fry get it done in his debut tournament? All that and more when we review UFC 8 David vs Goliath from Puerto Rico, the one and only time UFC would visit the island, and this would actually spark protests of the sport for bullshit reasons by John McCain, which would force the UFC to be underground heading into the next year. But before we get to 1997, we have our first event of 1996, UFC 8. Follow me on this journey through the early days of UFC, and we are not far away from the debut of Pride FC, so things are about to get very interesting. Remember to like the video, remember to subscribe, comment your own thoughts below, and I will see you all next time.